Okay, so today's lesson is the full meal deal on how to graph lines when you're giving an equation using a table of values. Okay, so real quickly here we have y equals 2x minus 3. First thing we want to do is we want to make a table of values. We want to use enough points, and we want to use -2 to +2 if we have an integer for our rate of change. Now we've talked a little bit about a rate of change. We're going to look a little bit more at that. And then you're going to use the equation to find your y values, which we did lots last couple of days. And then we're going to graph points to make lines, and the lines what we focused on yesterday. I'll be checking your homework soon. So let's make a table of values. You can see here for our rate of change, it's a 2. It is a whole number, which is good because what we want to do is make sure we're graphing whole numbers. Okay, so we are going to be able to graph whole numbers really easily if we go from -2 to +2. It allows us to graph integer values. Okay, so we have our input, which is x, and then we're going to figure out our output, which is y. Do a table of values real quick. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Okay. In the old days, they would make us go this, but I know you guys are kind of soft, so we're going to just go -2 to +2. So you'll do exactly what you've done the last couple of days. Go y equals 2 times -2 minus 3. Just humor me, write down a little bit of work somewhere so you don't make a simple algebra mistake, otherwise everything's wrong. Okay. So there we have y value of -7 when x is -2, and then y equals 2 times -1 minus 3, y equals -2 minus 3, y equals -5, and let's do that again for 0. So we get y equals 2 times 0, which is kind of special, isn't it? Because that equals 0, and so we actually get just the very last number, -3. Okay, so now you can start seeing a pattern here. Because our inputs are going up by 1, our outputs, we can see the pattern, are going up by 2. So your rate of change then equals 2 over 1. Totally simplified, it equals 2. And you can then confirm that your answers are correct because it equals your rate of change. Okay, and so you could continue that pattern. So -3 plus 2 would give us -1, plus 2 would give us +1. Okay, so now we have these table of values, we can make our graphs. So graph that really quickly. I'm going to erase this work. Actually, I don't really want to erase that work. I will graph right over here. Actually, I can't graph there. Where can I graph? Man, oh man, I got no space. I'll graph up top. Here we go. So if you're making this graph on a separate sheet of paper, that's no problem. Okay. Have your grid, apply it so that it's on a line, and then go in, make your marks in between, on, 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 and then you try and keep this scale about the same. Okay, it's not going to be a super crazy accurate graph, but it's going to be good enough for what we're doing. Now you don't see the grid lines, but that's okay. So we'll plot our points. Now if the points aren't on here, don't worry about it. Just plot what you can plot. So let me start with -2, -7. That's going to be way down here, so I will not plot that one. -1, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we go. 0, -3 right here. 1, -1 right here. And 2, +1 right here. And now I have enough points to make a line, so I'm going to use this new device called a ruler. Okay. And make a nice long line. I need arrowheads, and it has to be the full width of my grid. Now I'm a little short here, so I'm just going to make my line right to there. There we go. So I just graphed the line completely. Okay, and I go through all my points. Not super accurate because I don't have grade paper, but that's okay. So if you have to do this on a separate sheet of paper, that's how you do it. All right. Next one. So now we have y equals -1. Right? Remember, that's a -1, so it's still an integer value. So for my inputs, I'm going to use my regular inputs of -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Always use that if you have an integer. Okay. So then my output values I have to find. So y equals -x minus 2. Y equals -1 times -2 minus 2. So y equals 2 minus 2, y equals 0. Next one, -1. So y equals -1 times -1 minus 2, y equals 1 minus 2, y equals -1. And for the next one, I'm going to have 0. So y equals -1 times 0 minus 2. Y equals 0 minus 2, y equals -2. Good. And so let's check my rate of change. Am I doing this right? Here I'm going up by 1s. Right. And over here I'm going down by -1. Okay, so I'm going up by -1. So my rate of change then equals -1 over 1, which simply equals -1. So now that I got this accurate, I can complete this pattern. -3, -4. So let's go and graph this line then. So I have -2, 0, which is right here. I have -1, -1, which is right here. I have 0, -2, which is right here. I have 1, -3, which is right here. And I have 2, -4, which is right here. And so I can see I have a line. Now, if one of my points was not in this line, I did it wrong. I'd have to go back and fix it. Okay. And so now I'm going to make my line. Move this one a tiny bit up. There we go. Now I have two lines. I don't know which is which. So what I need to do is I need to label it. I can label this one number 2 because it's question number 2. Or I can write the equation as well. Just find one end where you got some space and write it at the end of the line. Some teachers have different ways of labeling. I just want to keep it simple. So the simplest way is just to use a number. So that's line 1, that's line 2. There you go. That's a question on the test. Okay. Now what if you have fractions? So if you have fractions like 2/5 and 4/9, you'll get a fraction, and that's going to be hard to plot because it's not as easy. Okay, you're not on the corner of a grid. So what we want to do here is we want to use multiples of the denominator to cancel out. So if we have 2/3, we would times it by 3. Okay, so those would cancel and we would get 2 as our answer. Or if you could say 1 and 1, you'd say 1 times 2 divided by 1, which is 2 over 1, which is 2. So what we want to do when we have a fraction, we will use multiples of the denominator. So we have 5. So what are multiples of 5? 5, 10, 15. But keep it simple. These are the two easiest. Now, math-wise, 0 is also super easy because we found that would just cancel out this term and that would be our answer. So that's another number we want to keep. Now, what we have to do, though, is you guys got to think around the box. Not just 5, but also -5 and -10 with our negatives. So that's what we're going to do. -10, -5, 0, 5, and 10. Okay, watch this. This works out really nice. So y equals 2/5 times -10. And yes, I'm writing that -10 up high deliberately because these guys cancel to 1 and -2. So y equals 2 times -2, which is -4, minus 3. Y equals -7. Try the next one. Y equals 2 over 5 times -5 minus 3. So y equals -2 minus 3. How do I get that? These cancel to 1 and -1, and so I get 2 times -1. Okay? And so this y equals -5. So here's -7, here's -5, and then 0, y equals 2/5 times 0 minus 3. So y equals 0 minus 3, y equals -3. There we go. Let's check our rate of change. What are we going up by? Here we're going up by 5s each time. Here were we going up by 2s each time. So if I continued that pattern, what would I get? -1. If I continue the pattern, what would I get? +1. And so now you have points, you can make a graph. Okay. I'm going to see if I can sneak this graph into the middle by moving these over. Yeah, let's do it right in the middle. Okay, so I throw down a nice easy grid, just like you can if you're doing a separate sheet of paper. Now, I have graph paper for you in the assignment, but not all of you have printers, but that's okay. Find a little piece of lined paper like I just did, put your grid on the line, that's the easiest place to start, then go in between the line, on the line, in between the line, on the line, in between, on, in between, on. Same thing going down. In between, on, in between, on, in between, on, in between, on, and do the same thing going this direction. And so then I can plot my points. So 10, -7, this point is like way over here. So I can't graph it, just ignore it. Only plot what you can plot. -5, -5, I can plot that one. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we go. There's 5, -5. Next one, 0, -3. So I don't go anywhere left or right. And I go down 3 right there. Good. And then I got 5. -1. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I go down 1. There we go. And now that I have a line, I'm going to make a graph. Nice line, super big, super long, with arrows one side to the other. And what do I have to label it with? You're right, the number 3, because it's from question number 3. Okay, let's do number 4. So number 4 real quick, my input of my x and my y. Choose numbers that are going to give you integers. So if I have multiples of 9, that's going to be 9 and 18. So don't forget about the negative numbers, -9 and -18. So I start with -18, -9, 0, 9, and 18. And so then I do a little bit of math. So y equals 4 divided by 9 times -18 plus 5. These cancel. Excuse me. -2. And so I multiply 4 times -2, which gives me y equals -8 plus 5. So y equals -3. Good. -9. So we got y equals 4 over 9 times -9 plus 5. Cancels, so y equals -4 plus 5. Y equals 1. 0. Any ideas what that would be? Remember, multiply by 0, and you're going to be left with just the constant, the number at the very end. So y equals 0 minus 5. Y equals -5. Good. Looking at the pattern now. Let's see our rate of change. What are we going up by here? We're going up by 9s each time. And looking at our rate of change here, we're going up by 4s. Sorry, we're going down. Hold up here. Oh, that should be a negative, positive one. So here we go. I did something wrong with my math. I know I did something wrong with my math. And Okay, and I found the mistake with my math. So basically I looked at my work and I went from a -5, and I changed that, sorry, I went from +5, I changed it to a -5. So I have fixed that, so this should be a +5 here. Now I have a correct rate of change. My rate of change is 4/9, and so I can continue the pattern. So this would be a 9, bad writing, and continue the pattern one more time, going up by 4, I'll get 13. So I can now graph that line. Now a lot of these points are going to be really big and they're going to be off my grid. That's okay. So -18, that's way over here. I'm just going to ignore it. -9, well, let's check that out. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And +1, so I go up 1. So it's going to be about there. Now I should graph it because I need 3 points in order to make a line. 2 points for sure, but 1 point's good to check. 0, +5, so I have 0. I can go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we go. There's 0, +5. And the next one is 9, 9. So I'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more. Okay. So now I can make my line. Mr. Barker will not give you a line to graph where you won't have enough points on your grid to make your line. Okay. And fix mine. Obviously you have a ruler, a little bit easier. Good. There's my line. Call that number 4. Okay. So let's try this one. Okay, so you're trying this one. What numbers are going to use? Look at your denominator. So 3 and 6. And with the negatives, -3, -6. And don't forget our good friend, which makes it easy, which is 0. Okay, substitute in, do some math. Now don't forget about your negative sign in front. So you're going to get y equals -1/3 times -6. Notice where I'm putting my negative signs, nice and tight and high, so I can see it. They multiply by each other. So that gives me y equals +2 minus 3, y equals -1. Do the next one, y equals -1/3 times -3 minus 3. So y equals -1, +1 minus 3, y equals 2. The next one, 0, y equals 1/3, -1/3 times 0 minus 3. 0 minus 3, y equals -3. Let's see our pattern. So our rate of change, we're going up by 3s each time. And here we're going up by 1. So if I complete the pattern, this would be this should be -2 and -4 and -5. So again, slow down, show your work. I'm showing my work. I'm still messing up on my signs here and there. Can you plot those points and graph them? Absolutely. So always choose x values. Here's our takeaway. Always choose x values -2 to +2 unless you have fractions. If you have fractions, then use multiples of the denominator. And we're talking about our rate of change. So y equals 3x plus 2. This is an integer. And so you will use the -2 to +2. If you have a rate of change that's a fraction, like 7/3x plus 2, well, that's your fractional rate of change. Let me make that writing better. And so if you have a fraction, use multiples of 3. So it would be 3, 6, -3, -6, and don't forget your friend, the one that's easy to do, 0. Okay, so multiples of the denominator. Okay, your homework here is this worksheet graphing table of values. Now, if you don't have a printer at home, that's okay. You can do this, right? If you don't have a printer, you can graph, you can graph and even work on graph paper. Or you can even use regular lined paper. So if you're using regularly lined paper, just to review what to do, let's go there. Okay, it's real simple. You're going to use your ruler and draw your grid. Now, luckily, I have this little device. So here's my grid. And keep it simple. Probably go to 10. All right, so in between the line, on the line, in between, on, in between, on, in between, on, in between, on, in between, on. Same thing going down, in between the line, on the line. So you get a nice grid. And left to right is a little tricky because you want to try and keep it going up by the same space, the same increments. Okay, so you got to be a bit of a judge there. But if you go vertical first, then it's easier to keep the horizontal somewhat the same, because your eyesight kind of has that to look at and adjust with. Okay, so now I can use this to graph if you don't have a printer that's working. Okay, if you do have a printer that's working, also attach the I'll also attach a couple of sheets of blank graph paper that'll make it easier for you. Okay, any questions? Let me know you're doing this worksheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions, probably 2 minutes each, 16 minutes, done. All right. Oh, where's my grapher?